Throughout the entirety of this episode, I bet Sabine was just going, well, this deal is getting worse all the time. Hello, interwebs. I hope you're all doing well because we are here to review the latest episode of Star Wars Ahsoka, Episode 6, and I will stay spoiler-free for just a couple minutes here, but oh boy, is that going to be difficult because this was the episode. Again, I'm not going to say anything specific just yet, but this was delivering on so many fronts, many of the things that many of us were coming into Ahsoka for, and it just has me so freaking excited. But what surprised me most, that despite delivering on all these big, Star Wars fan moments that I've just been waiting for and earning them so well, the thing that I was most enthralled by was the characters that were newest to the Star Wars universe in this show, and that is Baylan. Yet again, Baylan is stealing this series, and I find myself almost even more interested in his background and his worldview and what he is seeking, even more so than the stuff that I have been seeing being built up for years now within Star Wars. And that is just, I think, speaking to the strength of the characterization of everything going on here, because there is no lost moment here. There's no drop beat to my mind. Everything this episode just worked, and I was so entranced. And yet, despite all of that, I was most interested in this new guy saying some new things within Star Wars. And it almost, and this is going to be a little bit personal, but it almost has me a little bit angry because, as many of you know, I've been working on a very long Star Wars video that was supposed to come out months ago, but because we're doing animation for it and things like that, has been delayed, and hopefully we're going to release it next month. But a lot of the things that we talk about in that video I think are still worth saying because they're about all of Star Wars as a whole, but are being addressed in this show directly by Baylan, and I'm just like, oh, speak to me because I find you fascinating. And so I'm just like, you're going to ruin my video for me because everyone's going to be like, well, Ahsoka addressed it now. But regardless, I think it'll still be very much worthwhile. But I am very excited for the show. But to talk about the rest of it, let's get right into spoilers because this was wonderful. All right, let us start with the part of this that I just have to talk about. Holy crap, we finally got Thrawn. And I have to say, visually, he is a little different than I imagined him from the book. You're never going to get that when you have a live-action actor. But beyond just the visual of an actor playing him, not like a cartoon character or imagination, he was spot on. His look, his eyes, especially when there's a shot where he was standing in the dark and you just saw his red eyes, staring at Sabine in that one scene. I was like, oh, this is everything. And his voice was just perfect, and I just love his calculating feel throughout everything. It was just wonderful. We'll get back to him, but I just needed to say that up front because we were waiting for him, and frankly, he delivered in my book. I hate to be just such a stan, but I'm just going to stan this episode because I was really loving everything. We start off the episode, I think, with a really nice scene between Huyang and Ahsoka opening up to Huyang about why she thinks Sabine might have made a selfish choice, of chosen something that, the dark side sort of feel to it. The dark side is all about being selfish, and Jedi are about being altruistic. But what I like about that is it kind of ties into the larger theme that we start to see with Baylan here, in that maybe Sabine did make a selfish choice, a choice for herself. Maybe she did make it altruistically for Ezra. Maybe it's a mix of both. And that's where the Jedi need to change to be. That's what Ahsoka needs to change to be something other than the Jedi, to be something new. To be something in between or distinct or completely separate from that dichotomy. And that's what Sabine is representing by making both a selfish and not selfish choice at the same time. And so, Ahsoka having this fear of a binary is something that she's not able to fully deconstruct yet because of her upbringing as a Jedi that we saw last episode. But Huyang sort of pointing out, maybe this was the only choice she had. Maybe she was, this is the choice that she could make because that's who she is. That's who she always is going to be. And that's fine because that's just who she is. It doesn't need to be this choice between selfish and not selfish. It doesn't need to be this button push into, fascism or democracy that, the Jedi keep telling over and over again. And I really love that sequence. And I love this sort of evocation of the theme of stories that we get with Huyang, even telling the story of a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And these are the stories that the Jedi tell themselves. And they're telling a story like Star Wars, these same stories repeating over and over and over and over again. Even the old stories are just the ones that we hear in our galaxy, where we just hear these same, archetypical stories over and over again. And we don't get to hear anything new. The hero's journey over and over and over again. And so that story being told through Huyang, just representative of the long time ago, thematically just really amazing. It was cute to say a long time ago, but it was actually speaking, I think, to something deeper that this episode's getting to. when we arrive at the new galaxy, and I forget what the planet is called, but this old Dathomiri planet, I was like, this was creepy. It was scary. I love the visuals of the Dathomiri like statues and this like the scream sort of looking things. And then you see these howlers off in the distance, and they look scary initially, and that gets broken down later on. Like this episode is just so smart in so many ways. And we see the howlers, and they're scary in the background. But then we arrive at this big statue, and there's the 3 Dathomiri witches. And I was very much getting the 3 witches of fate, like past, present, future, that you see again in a lot of archetypical stories. These 3 pieces of fate, like so that can tell the threads of history. And that's, again, part of that like archetypical story that the hero's journey always pulls from in Western society, Western culture, sort of like, oh, these things from antiquity. They represent that here. And they just are telling the same story, and yet Sabine doesn't fit in, as they say. She's something outside of our story. She's something different. Keep that in mind. And and they're scared of her. But then Thrawn showing up, and he has the look of these stormtroopers. I love that they were dirty. I love that they were cobbled together. They had these like gold pieces on them, but they were still like just looked like they have just been through some shit on this planet. Was just super fascinating. And then Thrawn coming in and stepping up, I was like, just the weight of that was so good. I loved it so much. And I thought this was just absolutely fantastic seeing him. But then he honors Sabine's choice of being like, oh, yeah, you help me, I'll help you. And I love this like evocation of history from them, from Rebels, like, familiar face sort of thing. And I just, again, the calculating feel of like, he knows how to wordplay. He knows how to like do the right thing, honorable. Like Thrawn is an honorable figure to a degree, but he will play it enough so that he can get what he wants in those situations. And so letting Sabine go, but then having Baylan go after her to try to hunt her down and also kill Ezra was great. But then this brings me to Baylan, right? And this is kind of core to what I was talking about, right? The story of the hero's journey that Star Wars supposedly is built upon is that it's a cycle, constantly looping back upon itself over and over again. We get, Luke falling, he goes into the cave, comes back with the new status quo, the elixir, he's learned something new and changes society. But the story that tells, as we saw with the character of Anakin, is it leads you to these moments where it's like you can either choose fascism or democracy, like neoliberalism or fascism, these endless decays, empire and Jedi, dark side, light side, and it becomes like a button push that our heroes get to decide these systems for us. Our individuals, these archetypical characters, these Jungian archetypes get to be our heroes. And we saw that not only with Anakin, where he chose the Empire, but even Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi, where he could choose between the Emperor or he could choose the New Republic. Even in, the sequel movies with Rey choosing between, Emperor Palpatine again or not. And it's just these cycles upon cycles upon cycles. And if you look into the history, this my video is going to be about, so sorry I'm ranting it at you right now, but I'm very excited about it. We're doing a whole thing about it, but this show is starting to directly address it. If you look at the hero's journey, it is also Joseph Campbell who came up with the ideas of the hero journey, erasing a lot of the histories of other cultures. He makes these stories about like, oh, the hero's journey is in every single culture, but he erases the nuances of those stories quite often and only focuses on the stories that fit that hero's journey myth. I'd highly recommend the book The Heroine with 1,000 Faces, which is a good way of talking about women and how women are sort of erased in this ideas of the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell's monomyth. It's sort of like, that's what Star Wars supposedly built up upon. George Lucas chose to do that, but it's a story our society tells too, over and over again. Like, oh, we need people to save democracy. It's going to fall into fascism over and over again. These cycles that neoliberalism and capitalism, again, I'm getting very political here, continually say that it's always these big cycles that end up looping into each other. What if we don't follow that? What if we create something new? What if we create something different? And Sabine represents that in the Dathomiri sisters, who are falling into that Jungian archetype of story of women being these witches fall into. You also have Baylan also searching for this too. He wants to be something new as well, and he may seemingly fall on the dark side, but he is also this new thing who's searching for the beginning of the stories. Because when you learn something has a beginning, you can learn that it has an end. To know that something began knows that it's not the way the world is. It's something, the world can be something new, because it's not the way the world actually is, because it had a beginning. It wasn't the way the galaxy always existed. I love it. And so him like going out and talking to his apprentice and saying, I taught you to be something new, not a Jedi, not a Sith. I'm looking for the beginning. There's something here, something calling to me. I'm like, oh, that's so creepy, and I love it. But then this leads us to the sort of end of the episode with everything with Sabine and her finding Ezra. Her with the Howler was adorable, and I love this too, that even this thing that we framed as like creepy and scary with these wolves turns out to be cute and adorable and lovely. And then we meet these like little turtle people on this apparently dark and evil planet, but they're cute little turtle people. And I'm like, this is the most Star Wars shit ever, but even on this scary dark planet, there's life. It doesn't have to be essentialized as this evil place. There's joy here, right? And there's kindness and there's small loving creatures. And of course that's where Ezra is. And getting to see Ezra with his beard was so wonderful in live action. I'm still getting used to the actor a little bit in live action as opposed to animated, still trying to see Ezra in there. It is just weird to see like a live action actor play Ezra, but in a totally different context than we've seen him before. But the chemistry between him and Sabine was very, very solid off the bat, and I loved that. The Howler, again, most adorable thing ever. I love it. I want a toy of it. I love it so much. And this leads us to the end of the episode where Thrawn is going to send people after Ezra, and he's going to try to kill Ahsoka when she shows up. And I love him being like, yeah, well, unless we know it's for sure, we don't mistrust a Jedi. Don't believe that a Jedi's dead, because he's made that mistake before. So I loved all of this. This was phenomenal. If you hadn't guessed, this is touching upon some of my critiques of Star Wars that I've had for a very long time. Check out my video that'll be coming out hopefully next month on that, where we'll be talking about the whole history of, the hero's journey and archetypes and all that jazz within Star Wars. But Ahsoka's touching upon the very critiques that I had for this show, for Star Wars generally. So I am loving this. This was fantastic. What did you all think, though? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. But beyond all of that, I hope you all, my friends, live long and prosper.